Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at Bloody Bunny for the Nintendo Switch. And whether you're a fan of the webtoons or not, this one has something for everybody to enjoy. That is, of course, assuming that everybody enjoys cute stuffed animals performing execution-style attacks on somewhat Mickey Mouse zombie clone-looking enemies. But with all niceties aside, let's jump into the story. As far as the game's narrative is concerned, it's just about as graphic as the game's visuals. And pretty much playing as a small girl who's been captured by little stuffed animals and thrown into a meat grinder, well, she's had her disembodied soul transplanted into the confines of a small stuffed bunny. And to make matters worse, they've performed this same evil on her little sister. And so, in an all-out mission of absolute rage-style revenge, our little Bloody Bunny's only mission besides getting her little sister back is to kill every single enemy in her path. And as we make our way through the game's 7 levels and 9 bosses, we'll be slaughtering minions, exploring rooms, and upgrading skills and abilities as you go. But for a game that is inarguably a fast-paced button-mashy hack and slash, I was really surprised with how intimately detailed the combat system of the game really is. In the introductory levels of the game, you're introduced to the 4 primary weapons, which all have their own unique styles and abilities, and can be used for different situations in the game. First, we have the primary blade weapon just for hacking and slashing, and then a mallet that can be used to destroy enemy shields, and also perform a little bit of area of effect damage. There is also a boomerang that you can acquire to kind of clear out enemies around your immediate perimeter, as well as our own ranged weapon being a bit of a throwing knife. And while each one of these weapons does have its own special skills that can be unlocked and upgraded as you play, the real primary dynamics of the game are involved in the execution of the enemies as well as the rage system. With every successful enemy attack, with every kill, and with every execution, you'll be increasing your rage bar, which is the blue bar up to the top left of the screen. And when it's full, you'll be able to release your unbridled rage, which increases the speed of your attacks and your damage. And depending on how you've upgraded your passive skills in the game, executions not only provide a small health boost, but can actually increase your rage bar while in rage mode. And so pretty much as long as you have enemies to slaughter, you can unleash some godlike damage. But that is considering that you're only really fighting the mobs, which only come in 2 types, either ranged or melee. And even though the general mobs do get progressively more difficult as the game goes on, the boss fights are where the game gets pretty difficult. Nearly every one of the boss fights in Bloody Bunny takes on its own little personality, and they are rarely a one-on-one encounter. You may have a large stationary target with tanky defense, or you might be cruising through a narrow hallway dodging boulders as you try and get that one critical strike. Or you might be fighting the ultimate rage-inducing demonification of Hello Kitty, which can bounce around the screen and unleash super rapid attacks with pretty much no warning. And so yeah, while the hacking and slashing is real through the general course of the levels, the boss fights take some real player tenacity and skill to get past. Moving into the presentation of the game though, and the visuals and audio, I was blown away by the visuals for Bloody Bunny. I never noticed a lag, and this is like 60 frames per second for a game with real-time combat and cutscenes. So I mean, yeah, if you're somebody who chases the visuals, this one it's up there. The soundtrack as well is pretty awesome, with some metal themes and some techno all thrown together, and with as much rage as the bosses can induce, the soundtrack keeps that adrenaline pumping and keeps you going back for more. But as awesome as the game looks, as gruesome as the story is, and as fast-paced as the combat is, there are still some things the player might want to know before diving into Bloody Bunny, even at the sale price. And I know you're all going to be shocked that my first comment isn't on the game's length. It actually is about an 8-hour campaign, depending on how quickly you can make it through those gatekeeping bosses. So no, that's a decent amount of game for the price. And so probably my first critique would actually be in the game's combat system. There's a ton of weapons and a ton of extra skills and so much stuff that you can unlock in active skills and abilities and passive skills. But in all reality, I found them mostly to be completely unnecessary. The giant hammer was useful for breaking shields, but you could actually just dodge past the enemy's attack and then hit it from behind. And for every single other situation in the game, your basic fundamental knife weapon is more than sufficient. And this unnecessary overdevelopment extends past just the weapons inventory and also goes kind of into the skills. Executions and rage mode are the most critical aspects in Bloody Bunny. And so in that sense, instead of buying extra skills, which aren't really terribly necessary, or upgrading the strength and power of all of the other weapons that you don't really need, merely dumping the captured souls that you've managed to get through general combat into your passive skills makes you really OP really fast. And while I'm not going to say that there's absolutely no use to developing other skills, because they do actually sometimes give you a bit of an edge in the boss fights, at least for my own personal gameplay style, I really didn't see much need to invest in anything else other than the knife and passive skills. And so in that sense, while having a lot of game mechanics available was kind of cool, they also were, I don't know, kind of unnecessary. The second big critique, while the visuals in the game are amazing, the visuals and camera control are a whole nother story. You do have the ability to lock onto enemies and change your lock to target whomever you want, but with lock active, attacking an enemy changes the focus of your lock. And so if you are attacking a boss being swarmed by smaller minions, it's going to be really hard to keep the boss in focus. And considering you can't really pan the camera very far back in that third-person view, sometimes it is really difficult to keep track of what's going on screen, especially in the situations where the bosses can jump around. On that same note though, performing executions is also a little bit disorienting, and that's pretty terrible considering they're absolutely fundamental to the game. During combat you're playing from behind the little bunny, but during the execution it flips the camera in front. And if after the execution was over it moved the camera back behind the main character, that would be a different story, but unfortunately it doesn't. The third critique for the game, though, would probably be its difficulty level. And I don't mean its difficulty level overall, because a challenging game is a challenging game. That has its own level of satisfaction. But what I'm calling it a critique is difficulty spikes. The general gameplay through each of the game's 7 levels is just seriously button mash hack and slash, and it is oddly gratifying. But with each of the bosses designed to have a slightly different nuanced combat, some are inarguably much easier than others, and it makes those more difficult ones just really stand out as huge rage-inducing gatekeepers. And in my own personal experience, beating them didn't give me gratification as much as an abatement of frustration. But moving on, pushing back from the table for a moment and looking at Bloody Bunny as a complete experience, I do think that it is a really good hack and slash game, and considering the visuals, considering the fast-paced combat, and considering the wealth of game mechanics available should you want to explore different playstyles, there is a whole lot of game for the money, even at its regular list price, so especially while it's on sale, if you are a fan of the genre, this is one you really should check out. But just as a little disclaimer, I did warn you about the rage, so don't blame that on me. But anyway, that does about wrap up the review of Bloody Bunny, now exclusively on the Nintendo Switch. So if you did enjoy the review, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw me a like or a comment to show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. Because as you can see, there are new and unique indie games coming out literally every single day. So whether it's an easy hard pass or an absolutely unforgettable gem, chances are, if it's on the Switch, you're gonna find out about it right here. But anyway, this has been The Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.